Act 2 All My Sons. It is later in the same evening, and Chris finally removes the trunk of the apple tree from the Keller yard. Afterwards, Chris and Kate discuss the possible reasons for George's impending visit. Kate expresses concern that the case about the failed airplane engine parts will be opened again and indicates that she should not withstand the strain of another trial. Chris continues to dismiss his mother's concerns, including the possibility that the feud between the Keller and Deaver families, which occurred during the trial, will resurface, a development that would be of particular significance to his wish to marry Anne. Kate, however, still has not been informed of the wedding plans. As Kate exists, Anne enters, and she and Chris resolve to announce the engagement to Kate later that evening. Now, in the same evening, Chris removes the trunk of the apple tree. Now, this is very symbolic. Removing the trunk of the tree means that he's removing the memories or any kind of possibility of Larry coming back. So he removes the trunk of the tree. And they both discuss, Chris and Kate, they both discuss that in case George who is coming, George is the brother of Anne, if he's coming, then all the past events will be reopened and there could be another trial. So the mother, that is Kate, is not at all comfortable with this idea. When she moves inside, Anne enters, and she and Chris they decide that they are going to announce their engagement to Kate later in that evening. Chris exists and Sue enters to find Anne hovering near the tree stump. A discussion ensues between the two women about the forthcoming nuptials, specifically, and the challenges of married life generally. Now, Sue and they both talk to each other and they talk about married life and all the kind of challenges that are involved with married life. Sue betrays her own mercenary views of her marriage, that happiness is based more on the financial stability of the couple than of the presence of love. Now, Sue has a different viewpoint of a successful marriage. She feels that money is very important, financial stability is very important, only then can a marriage be successful. Her comments reveal deep jealousy and resentment of the Kellers, especially Chris, whom she believes nurtures an idealism that is ridiculous in view of his financial success and his business and the social standing of the family. Now, here we come to know about what the neighbors think about the Keller family. Now, Sue, she has her own opinion about Chris, and she is a little jealous of Chris because she feels that Chris has achieved everything without doing anything, and she feels that Chris all the time pretends to be very idealistic, but he is not idealistic, and he his idealism is just a facade. It is ridiculous because the financial standing that the family has, it is all due to the manipulations of the Kellers. In fact, Sue believes that Chris is distracting Jim from his work and encouraging a frivolous desire to leave his medical practice for a career in research. Now, why is Sue so against Chris? Now, the reason here is that Chris keeps on telling her husband that you are doing a simple practice, although you are so intelligent, you should do some research. But then Sue says, we don't have your kind of money. So, since we have to uh, look after the house and everything else, all the expenses, we cannot afford to do the research. So, it has to be a medical practice. And she feels that Chris is all the time distracting Jim from work. The conversation becomes heated as the two women argue, first about Chris and then about the reputation of the entire Keller family. Now, here you feel that Anne is not at all ready to accept anything that Sue is saying about the Keller family. So they have a heated conversation. Chris enters and interrupts the discussion. Sue exits. The scene that follows develops the problem of merging the two families and the troubled histories. Anne questions Chris about the truth of Sue's accusations, especially the possibility that the entire community is convinced of Joe's guilt. Anne reminds Chris that in effect she has exchanged one father for another. One father is Steve and the another is Joe, by assigning guilt to the former, innocence to the latter. The implication is that she wants to be certain that the reward of switching allegiance has been worth the terrible cost, the emotional pain of losing her own father and family identity. Now, whatever Sue has said puts some kind of a doubt in the mind of Anne, and she asks Chris, "Do you really think I've done the right thing? I'm accusing my own father, and I am setting your father free. Am I doing the right thing?" Because if it is not right, then I have sort of neglected my own father, implicated my own father when he was innocent. So I mean, I am entitled to know about the truth. Joe enters and continues this line of discussion. He worries that Chris too will eventually switch allegiance as a result of empathizing with Anne and assigning blame for the pain inflicted on the Devers to his own family. The solution to this problem, in Joe's opinion, can be found if the two families live and work in close proximity. Now, Joe comes and he also has a fear that one day even Chris is going to leave him and he will blame him for the pain that was caused to the Devers. Devers is the family of Anne and George. And Joe feels that the solution is that both the families should live together and work together. Accordingly, he offers to find a position for George at a local law firm and to create a job for Steve in the factory after his release from prison. Chris objects strongly, while Joe insists that the past must be forgiven and forgotten. His protest to Christ that father is a father despite any wrongs that either father or son must commit foreshadows a conflict between the two men in the next act. Now, here we see some kind of conflict that is developing between Chris and Joe, and this particular conflict takes a bigger proportion in the next act. Joe exists just as Jim arrives with George, Anne's brother. The reason for George's visit becomes apparent immediately. He suspects engagement and directly opposes it. Tension grows as George explains his opposition to Chris and Anne's union. He has learned during his visit to Steve at the jail that Joe not only condoned but also directly ordered the shipment of the cracked cylinder heads. The best evidence he can provide is an appeal to the knowledge of the character of each man. Steve's weak will and George's attention to detail. How could Steve contradict Joe in view of his tendency to break under pressure? How could Joe possibly miss an entire shipment of parts when he meticulously? Now, it so happens that when George comes, he is totally against the theory of his father being convicted. He feels that Joe has pulled a long one on his father, and because of that, his father was interrogated and put into jail. And here, George also argues that my father is such a weak man. My father, Steve, was such a weak man. How could he ever do something like this without any encouragement, especially something to do with uh, some airplane parts which were supposed to go for the war? He couldn't take this kind of a responsibility. So, pushing everything on Steve's weak will has been manipulated, and so his father is innocent, but because of Joe's manipulation, he was made guilty and put into jail.